But back to this question about the power of the purse and the separation of the powers. There's a lot of people in the audience who wonder, are Republicans just nervous? Are they scared? Are they afraid they're going to get attacked when they make these fights over funding, which really fights over policies, not really fights over funding? What's the motivation behind people who feel like they just got to duck and cover to get through the next year and a half?
One thing I have noticed, and this will not make me terribly popular with my colleagues in Washington, but that's okay. There seems to be this mantra of let's wait until the next election. You gave us a majority in the House. And then we all went in 2014 and said, oh, well, we need the Senate. We need the Senate. We need you to open up your checkbooks, and we need you to go to the polls and give us the Senate. And guess what? You did. How many people came to you and said, don't worry about the Senate, we need 60 votes to get anything done there, so y'all stay at home, don't give us any money, we need 60 votes. Nobody said that. I never said it when I traveled to other states, working for some of our colleagues that won. So your frustration and your anger is rooted in the fact that we either misled you or raised your expectations to an unreasonable degree. Now, the 60-vote threshold you won't find anywhere in the Constitution. But Ron and our power was to get the Senate to change that. The appropriations you should look to us for. But we need to become more persuasive when we're talking to our fellow citizens, because the narrative seems to get set from day one. Republicans want to shut down government over X. And so we're fighting against the mainstream media, we're fighting against Democrats who are very disciplined in their message. How many of you punished yourself and watched the Democrat debate a couple of weeks ago? All right. And how many of you saw Senator Sanders ask a question about Secretary Clinton's #1 political weakness, which is trustworthiness? Did you see what he did with that? He absolutely folded on the issue. So you've got someone who was rising in the polls being given a gift of a question. And I watched it and I thought, you know, the Democrats are more interested in winning than they are anything else. Even if it means abandoning the greatest liability of their top candidate. You think you're going to see that tomorrow night during the Republican debate? I think the Democrats are very disciplined in their messaging. I think, as Senator Rubio said, they have a really big super PAC called the mainstream media. So you are fighting a messaging battle from day one, and you can be pretty persuasive. DeSantis is pretty persuasive. We've got other folks that are pretty persuasive, but you start in a hole. So if the narrative is Ron DeSantis wants to shut down government, you have to, #1, convince your constituents that that's not what the battle is about. I don't want to shut down government. I just want government to do what it's supposed to do. And then you have to win the underlying debate with all of those facts. And the issue is, do you have the attention of your fellow citizens enough to make those two arguments? And so I get it. I've listened to it. We just need to go along and get along so we can win the Senate. And we need to go along and get along until we win the White House. And then once we win all of that, then the mantra then becomes, well, let's don't rock the boat too much because we got another election coming up in 2 years. That's why you're frustrated, is because you want us to govern and lead, and we're fixated on the next election. So I get the frustration.
It's frustrating because, you know, the country's in dire straits. I mean, it's one thing to say, wait for the next election if this was like, you know, a time of just peace and prosperity, everything's humming along. But, you know, we have really significant issues that we have to address. And to just see the field until the next election, you know, is very frustrating. And when I first ran for Congress, I mean, I'd get people to come up to me all the time, and they were like, you know, Ron, you know, I had never run for anything in my life. They're like, we really like what you have to say. How do we know you're not going to go to Washington and drink the Kool-Aid and go native and catch Potomac fever? And my answer at the time was, well, look, I've been through the cauldron. I'm one of the few guys in the country that graduated from both Yale and Harvard and came out more conservative than when he went in. That's not easy to do. But I understand now, having been up up there why folks get frustrated, because all the energy, all the currents, the media, the lobbyists, everything, all are moving in the direction of bigger government, more spending, more debt. So a Democrat, all they got to do is get to Washington, and if they just ride the wave, they'll move in the direction that their voters want. For us, it's more difficult because you're fighting a very powerful, entrenched ruling class who wants more power for itself. And so we do have people, Matt mentioned in his introduction, who go up with good intentions, but sometimes they're just not as philosophically grounded as they need to be, and they can get swept up in the current. And so I think it's important when we're sending people to Washington that you're sending people who want to do things, who want to advance conservative principles, not just to kind of hibernate up there. And unfortunately, I do think we have Republicans who, their main thing is they don't really care what government does, if it gets bigger, whatever, as long as they're in control, that's all it is. So it's more about power rather than about principle. And I think that the more we're running a principle-based campaign and messaging, I think you're going to be more successful. But then obviously once you get up there, you got to follow through on that. And I don't think there's anyone in here who would get mad at Republicans if we were putting bills to repeal and replace Obamacare on his desk and he was vetoing it. You guys would all blame Obama for vetoing that. You wouldn't blame the Republicans, but when you're not even trying, well, I understand why people get frustrated and they end up frustrated with Republicans.